business. Segment and witness my musical litmus. Just for your fitness. Beg my forgiveness, my records go Guinness, so be my apprentice. Unicorn hacking in Venice, angel investors, my internet tennis. Still criminal till I spill it to finish. Survival the fittest, the digital menace. I'm still in idle the scene, popping them volumes and sipping caffeine. Marshall web packets in us a routine that I write to a stream with a proxy between. Embedded radix and word, macros disabled, your boy ain't deterred. Wire transferred, social the teller and teller you heard about the king nerd. I keep it suave on the phone, shut off utilities, black out your home. Cracking the wireless back with a drone, keep the Mac clone, D off the zone. Swat your whole crew with
Hi, everyone. It's Cyan Bannister for the Canceled Podcast here with Lee. Hi, Lee.
Hello, we're back again for episode 6.
Woohoo! To talk about something I am not excited about, but a lot of people are engaging me online about it, so figured we'd do a whole podcast around it.
And that is going to be minimum wage.
Yep.
It's kind of a hot button topic.
It really is. It's interesting because recently somebody was asking me if I supported minimum wage for Uber drivers. And I responded, I don't support minimum wages at all in any form for any industry. And I think that really shocked them. And what was really interesting is that they claimed that it must make me popular among my friends and that I take this stance because of my friends and I would not be welcome into the club of investing or whatever because fellow investors don't believe in minimum wage. And you couldn't be further from the truth.
And then that's just because they have some sort of thought that people that are investing, their whole goal is to somehow take away from others and profit off of them, right?
Right. And so, to be honest with you, it's a very unpopular opinion. It is not widely held. I would say more people are pro minimum wage than against it, partially just because it's already the law. It's been the law for a long time. And so we just constantly have this argument over what the number is.
Yeah. Minimum wage was instituted by FDR back in the 1930s after the whole issue with the Great Depression to kind of stabilize wages and everything. But from there, it's just progressively gotten larger and larger and larger and more of a political talking point through the last administration since then.
Right. I think that this is the problem with most laws that get passed is they don't go away ever once, the problem that they were trying to address is resolved. Instead, they get bigger and bigger and bigger and become a political tool.
Yeah.
But that's not why I'm against it. I'm not against it because I want to punish people or I want them to make less money. I'm against it because I experienced personally what it can do to really poor people.
And, talking about that, we have one of the best economists that has ever lived. I have a sound clip from him. He is Nobel laureate. His name is Milton Friedman. It's one of my favorites. This was from a presentation of his back in 1995 about minimum wage. Just a second.
The one thing that a minimum wage would do would be to reduce the number of people who receive a positive income from working. Those people who were kept in employment would have a higher income. But let me look at it a different way. Look at it from an overall point of view. The higher minimum wage will lead to people being unemployed. I think everybody will agree on that. All people say is, oh, well, the number would be small, and that's offset by the advantage of those who are still employed. However, by decreasing the number employed, do you increase or decrease the total pie? Obviously, you have more to distribute. If more people are employed, they produce more. These low-wage people who are driven into unemployment by a rise in the minimum wage don't produce what they otherwise would have produced. So the total pie is small. Now, how can that on net be an advantage? There's a great deal of nonsense talked about the minimum wage. If raising the minimum wage from $4.25 to $5.15 is a good idea, why not to $10? Why are you so mean and nasty that you don't want people to have $10 now? It's countered by saying, oh, well, a little is good, but a lot would be bad. Now, I don't understand the logic of that. If a lot is bad, then a little is bad. It's all in the same direction. It doesn't change direction.
All right. So, yeah, that was Milton Friedman back in 1995.
It's interesting that some people, he is one of the greatest economists to ever have, lived. And it's interesting because a lot of people will immediately dismiss what I have to say because they don't like Milton Friedman, but whatever.
Well, he's not the only one. Most economists will agree as well. You can even go to and the people that trust and appreciate the government, they can also, let me pull this up. So this is from the CBO. Go over to it. So these are projections on what would
What does
happen.
CBO stand for?
This is the Congressional Budgeting Office.
Okay.
So this is the organization. Where did my cursor go? This is the organization that there it is. That takes an assessment of like the cost of operating government entities and infrastructure, real estate, et cetera, and it comes with a whole budget. So this is the projected impact of what would happen if you raised minimum wage to $15 an hour. And if we raise it now in 2020, by 2025, you're going to lose like 1.2 million jobs. And that's
Wow.
that's the optimistic low end estimate. It could go up to 3.6 million. So
And
even
how is that a good thing?
it's not. So you're gonna have fewer working hours, and you're gonna have fewer people with low wage skills or low skill labor out of work.
So I think that's what people don't really understand. Also, it prevents people from starting businesses. So let's start there. If I wanted to start a business, and let's just say I'm bootstrapping it, and I want to start a little business selling sweaters on the street corner.
Mhm.
And in order to be staffed, in order to sell these sweaters, I have to work myself, potentially making way less than minimum wage in order to make the numbers work. But let's just say that I, at some point, want to hire a person. But I run the numbers and I realize that there's no way, I'm not even paying myself, above minimum wage. There's absolutely no way that I can legally hire someone. So that job just doesn't exist. But what if I could pay them $8 an hour or $10 an hour? And so some person out there that would be happy, thrilled even, to have that $8 an hour doesn't get that job. And that's what happened to me when I was homeless. So when I was homeless, I had lots of issues going on. One was, looking not homeless, looking clean. But the other issue was experience. And so when I would go in and apply for a job, they would look for, a high school diploma or they would look for job experience. But I couldn't get that experience because guess what? They gave all of those jobs away to people who had experience or had high school diplomas because they were looking for some sort of criteria to weed people to the left or right, so to speak, of the left side, let's say, being you don't make any income, and the right side is you pass some arbitrary bar. And I couldn't pass the bar. And so I suffered as a result.
And that was credentialism, right? Of
Credentialism,
not having a high school degree or
yeah,
GED.
or any experience. And the other thing is I would have worked for less to get that experience on my quote unquote resume, just so that I could move ahead. And then the other thing was that I had to resort to below under the table income, which is technically illegal. And so a lot of people will tell you, oh, well, if you're not skilled enough, just work under the table. But if you work under the table, you're worse off because you don't get things like disability insurance and all of the various perks that come with, being employed.
Mhm. Or even if your wage is increased to minimum wage, they'll cut back your hours to where you're below the 40-hour minimum per week, and then you are entitled to no benefits.
Exactly, none. So I don't think people have any, not all people. I mean, obviously some people listening to this are like, hell yeah, at least someone's talking about this. But a lot of people don't realize, the harm that they're inflicting on the truly poor. And I mean, a lot of people, it's infuriating because they say I come from a place of privilege. And I'm like, really? Like, I didn't realize eating out of dumpsters, not having a home, washing in public fountains was privileged. To those people who say that, I'm sorry, but go fuck yourself because that's just really fucked up. If I had any privilege whatsoever, maybe it was because I'm female. If you look out on the streets and you see the homeless population, it's predominantly male, and there's a reason, is we have a soft spot for helping women more than we have a soft spot for helping men.
Yeah.
I think men are disproportionately punished out on the streets than women are. So if anything, maybe, just maybe, being a female helped me, but I can't know that for sure. I do know that I would have happily scrubbed toilets for $1 an hour. That would have kept me from sitting out on the streets and panhandling. And panhandling does not give you a sense of pride.
No.
It's the opposite. There's, there's some homeless people who, turn it into a game and try to make it fun. But for me, every time I ask somebody for money, it just hurt inside. It just hurt. And
I mean, that's one of the things that a job gives people, and that's something that people overlook. And that's why I'm also against, a lot of welfare programs that don't require work or getting back into the workforce, or even the idea of a universal basic income, because that robs people of their dignity, their sense of purpose, even if it's not the most highly skilled position or job in the world. There is some sort of comfort knowing that you have somewhere to go, that you
yeah,
have a routine, that you have an obligation, a purpose. So it might not be the most luxurious position, but you know what? Even if you're working in fast food, you're helping feed people that are working that can't necessarily afford to eat very expensive food, or that need something so they can get right back to work. You're part of a backbone, part of a system. And no matter what job you have, there is a sense of purpose, and you're helping impact and hopefully improve other people's lives.
yeah, there are people that truly cannot work. I know that to be true. However, there are more and more job opportunities popping up for people than ever before that allow you to work from home or to do things like customer support or very, very simple things. And so the range of job opportunities for everybody is increasing. It is not decreasing. And so being able bodied to work means something different today than it did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I, the thing about Social Security and things like that, I really feel like we should incentivize people to get off of it. Instead, we penalize them.
You punish them.
We
If,
punish
if
them.
if if they're on some sort of dependent government program, if they do get some part-time job, they no longer qualify for the
Right. So they're
subsidy.
terrified. Everybody that I've met that's on it is terrified of losing this thing that is a quote unquote given
Hmm.
for something that is uncertain. So what if we like ramped up the pay? I know this is weird, but ramp up the pay if they get a job and then eventually they're on their own.
Mm.
But it's like an incentive
Or if they have
to get
like another
off.
health crisis or something in the future, they can fall back on
Yeah,
it and no longer lose it, instead of having it a one-time issue.
right. And so I'm not against safety nets. I'm pro UBI mostly just because I would really like to argue about one single number. But I'm only pro UBI if we argue about one single number.
And that
So
means
get rid
getting
of
rid of
everything
all of
else.
these other programs in order to facilitate that one program,
Yeah. Yeah.
to simplify and streamline.
But I think another thing that the same people who are pro minimum wage, um, are concerned about sex work, and they're concerned about teenagers getting involved in sex work. And I would argue that minimum wage drives people into sex work because if you can't get a job above the table, you go underground and you start resorting, to things that are more desperate. There were people in my community when I was on the streets who actually turned to sex work because, that ended up being an easy way of making money. It put them in really dangerous and compromising positions. And sometimes they did it for way less than market rate
Hmm.
because they were minors, because, they had nothing else that they felt that they could do. And then they got trapped into that. And I just really think that people don't understand, be you can't assume that young people um, have like the same buffet of options that everyone else has, especially when they're that destitute and that poor.
Yeah.
And I would have so much rather be able to walk into any place and say, I will sweep your floors, I will wash your dishes, I will do any low skill labor for any amount that you're willing to pay me because it's a heck of a lot better than standing out on the street corner, either selling my body or, which I hate to confront people with that, but that is true, or panhandling. I remember I stopped panhandling because one day I asked this guy for spare change and he turned around and he had a baby with him. And he said, I'd love to give you money, but I have to save it for my child. He's like, my kid needs this money. I'm so sorry. And it hit me in the heart. I was like, I'm taking away from people's livelihoods and their well being. And a lot of these people aren't that well off. Like they're just making it by too. They're a step above me,
Mhm.
but it didn't make me feel good. So in that moment, I was like, I've got to figure out a way to make money that doesn't involve, begging.
Yeah.
And that's when I started my t-shirt stuff. I started, you know, selling books that I would find in drop-off locations and selling clothes that people were donating to Buffalo Exchange. I did everything I possibly could to work around begging from people because it just didn't give me a sense of pride or a sense of ownership over myself. And, you know, I got to say, if you want people to have dignity and to be proud and to rise up out of these horrible conditions, you got to get rid of the minimum wage.
Yeah.
And if you want jobs to flourish, you've got to get rid of the minimum wage. There's a reason why restaurants right and left in San Francisco are closing down. They can't afford to hire people.
Yeah, that's one of the big problems is so in our public school system, most people, I would think, I don't think it's too much to say that a large portion of our population is financially illiterate. They don't necessarily understand basic economics because you're not even going to take an economics class
I didn't
probably
take an economics class. I
and,
figured this out.
until you go to college, or unless you learn it the hard Scrabble way,
Right.
and you just see it for your eye and experience it. So one of the things that really sticks out when you talk about minimum wage is the fact that small businesses are the ones that are impacted the most.
Yes.
So Walmart, Target, Amazon, they don't care if government requires them to raise minimum wage to $20 an hour. They would be perfectly happy with that.
They still would have less jobs
They would
because it
have
cuts
they
into their
they would
margins.
have
Yeah.
some fewer jobs, but they can also it also allows them the opportunity to elbow and nudge out competition.
Yeah.
So it raises the entry barrier into competitive markets. So other companies wouldn't be able to compete with them. So that means that Walmart or Amazon would get a larger share of the market. It really hurts and impacts smaller businesses and locally owned businesses because those are the ones that are struggling to compete with Walmart and Amazon with their convenient services by improving better customer service, local customer service, and customer loyalty locally. Those are the ones that don't have the budgets, and those are the ones that are going to be closing their doors when you just abruptly change and increase the salary of your employees by 50% overnight.
Right. Yeah. I think people, should think about that when they also are anti Walmart, anti big corporation, and then pro small business,
Mhm.
yet support minimum wage. you can't you can't have all that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the big businesses that can weather it and that they can write it off on taxes, they can expense it some sort of way on finances, and then also they have fewer competitive or fewer competitors on the market.
I also think that, if you're a small business and you want to compete with other small businesses, you would pay higher wages if you can. Like if
Hmm.
you go and you look at Starbucks is a big corporation and so is Chick-fil-A. But if you look at what they're paying people, it's pretty high. It's both locations are above the national minimum wage, and in some cases above the local minimum wage just naturally and here in San Francisco. And so, if you're capable of doing it, it becomes a competitive advantage over you versus other people to, attract top talent.
Yeah, well, and Chick-fil-A's been able to do that partially because of that and their work environment and because they're family oriented. So
Hmm.
other fast food, if you look at the fast food markets, their churn rate for employees is the highest it's ever been right now. We have a very tight job market. And so right now that I think the national average is between 130 and 150% churn rate.
Wow,
So every year they lose at least 100% of their employees
that's crazy.
because they are being paid minimum wage and they're low skill jobs. But the good thing is hopefully
Those are
those
usually starter
yeah,
jobs,
those are a lot of starter jobs. But the people that are starting those out, they get skills and then they go somewhere else.
which brings us to Uber.
Yeah.
So I've turned into Voldemort, um, the latest Voldemort when it comes to Uber, just by a handful of people.
She who shall not be named.
She who shall not be named. Because I don't support minimum wage for Uber drivers. or Lyft drivers or Postmates or Door Dashers or anyone. And the reason is, you know, what can you imagine what I would have given to be able to take a car and drive around and instantly, like hour one,
Hmm.
make money? Oh my God, that would have been a game changer. Would have changed my life. I mean, first of all, I had to have a car.
Hmm.
Um, just the mere fact that people have a car.
Now, talking about cars, I did hear a tale of people just giving you cars.
Well, yeah, that came later.
Oh, okay.
Um,
But just because they probably thought you were cute.
what's that?
Did they just think that you were did they probably just think that you were cute and they're like, "Oh, well, you can have a car." Or it's my extra car, you just take it.
No, the thing was that they were older people
Oh.
who gave me their cars. And so my first car that was given to me was a Pacer. It was a bright lemon yellow AMC Pacer. And it's interesting because I stole this Pacer to get to work and crashed it into a car during lunch break. Um, and the person who it belonged to lovingly gave it to me later. I really don't understand how I deserved to get this car, but she gave it to me. This was the woman that um, kind of raised me towards the end of my life and my into my teenage life, not the end of my life. But she gave me this car as a birthday gift. I believe I was like
Instead of
18
pressing
years
instead
old.
of pressing charges.
Yeah, I
That's
was about
pretty that's
18.
pretty nice.
So my first car was when I was 18. So below 18, I did not have a car.
And so imagine you having that when you were 18, like a fixed car that wasn't wrecked that you could
Yeah,
drive for Uber.
I don't know that Uber would allow my Pacer in the fleet.
Not now.
it had a habit of the engine cutting out and the brakes would stop working. It didn't have power steering, and so like it would just like go one direction once the power cut out.
And like no air conditioning back then.
No
or-
air. Well, that one actually had air
Oh.
conditioning. It didn't always work, and the radiator was prone to explode. So I would have been a good time as an Uber driver, but
It's like we might get you to where you're going, or we might be pushing
we
it
might
together.
not. We might be pushing the car. After that, I was given a Hornet by my dear friend Josh. That did not have a reliable driver's seat. It had a crate, literally a milk crate underneath the seat. So when we're talking people giving me cars, these were not like BMWs.
Mhm.
These were well-loved vehicles. But I had an AMC Hornet for a period of time. I also had a friend who, for whatever reason, took a chainsaw to the top of his Cadillac because he really wanted it to be top, like have no top. But it was like raw metal where he took the chainsaw to the caddy,
Mhm.
and it got towed, and he couldn't afford to get it out of the tow yard. And he asked me if I wanted it, and I was like, of course, I love free cars. So,
He's like, yes, I have a collection of them. Thank you.
and it was only like a few $100 to get it out of this tow yard. But on the way to the tow yard, he tells me, oh, just so you know, it has a hole in the gas tank. I'm like, okay. So then I got this Cadillac that sat out in front of my house. I got a Chevy S10 that was given to me. That was probably the best vehicle that was given to me as far as like reliability. But that would have made a shitty Uber car. I could only pick up one passenger at a time, and they'd have to sit next to me. So maybe I'd be the Lyft driver.
Unless they wanted to just jump in the back of the bed.
Yeah. Yeah, they could get in the back. In Arizona, that's kind of normal. Maybe that's like Uber for Arizonans, riding the pickup truck in the back.
Just knock off a couple bucks.
Yeah. And then out of a breakup with a boyfriend, we were together for 7 years. His mother thought that he should get me a car when we broke up, and it was really nice. He got me a Chevy Cavalier, by far the nicest car I had at the time. And that one probably could have been a Uber car, except for it was a 2-door coupe. Like you'd have to pull the front seat to get in the back, but whatever, it would have been fine. Regardless, having a car is a privilege, and it is a privilege that some people don't have. And when I had a car, I could get to and from work. And when I didn't have a car, well, those were sucky times, especially in the Arizona heat where it's 120 degrees a lot of the year. And, I really think that Uber, full disclosure, was an investor early in Uber. I also ended up through an acquisition of another company being a shareholder in Lyft. I have invested in Postmates. Um, you know, our family has invested in Live Ops, which is, work from home doing pizza fulfillment delivery stuff. There's a variety of companies. I've Wanolo, where you'll see this as a recurring theme. Cargo, which basically was helping drivers make extra income by putting, a bodega inside their car.
Hmm.
They've now moved to car tops, digital car tops for drivers. But you'll see a recurring theme here among my investments, which is to give people flexible work. The people that are really upset about not receiving minimum wage for driving their car don't understand that it's a miracle that they have this job to begin with. Like, I personally would hope that they would be thankful that entrepreneurs took a risk to bring that platform to market, because before that, it was a bigger racket for them to become a taxi driver.
Yeah.
They would have to rent someone else's car. They were already in the hole $150 the moment they drove the car off the lot. So they had to make back a debt.
Or they might even have to take out a loan to afford a medallion
And the
or
medallions
whatever.
sometimes in some cities are over $1 million.
Yeah.
And, of course, the taxi industry is upset that Uber and Lyft came along because they had a whole protectionist racket going on. So now the new protectionist racket is minimum wage, which is only a certain subset of drivers will full-time drivers, because they're trying to make this about full-time, not part-time, will get minimum wage. What will happen is the opposite, which will be everyone will just become part-time
Hmm.
and no one will be able to be full-time.
Yeah, and you could just be limited on the number of hours you drive.
Yeah. And the other thing is that it's going to eliminate a whole bunch of people from being able to drive.
Yeah.
And that'll be because basically what happens is prices go up. If people think prices are going to stay low, they're not. Prices will go up. The drivers will be happy about that limited, supply demand
In the short term,
in the short term. But what will happen is riders will become dissatisfied because they're paying a lot
they're paying
for
the
a product that,
same as what they were paying with taxis. I mean, the whole
yeah,
added value of Uber was convenience, knowing where your taxi was, your ride was, instead of just being in the dark of whether or not they're showing up. And two, having consistent charge levels, knowing how much you're going to be paying. Um, and so you take that away if you just try to go back to the way that taxis were operated before.
well, the other thing that really bugs me is this concept of people have a right to something. You know, I've heard this so many times. People have a right to free internet. Like, no, you don't. You don't have a right to the internet. Give me a break. You don't have a right to a certain wage, driving for Uber. You do not have a right. You know, it's not like the First Amendment.
Hmm.
Uh, and if you want it to be like the First Amendment, by all means, there's a process. Run it through the process and see if you can make it your God-given right to drive an Uber for exactly the wages that you want. If you want to make more, then become a livery driver, get a private clientele list, and drive them for 65, $70 an hour. You know, there's a way to do this. You know, if you don't like Uber, by all means, please get off of it. Like, don't drive anymore. Do something else. Uh, but I would argue that you do love it because it's giving you flexibility, the ability to make income when perhaps it would be impossible to make income another way at this moment in time.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, and then you're talking about people having a right to things. You have a right to engage in a particular behavior that you choose. It's your right to opt to use Uber.
mhm,
It is not your right to have a job with Uber. That's the difference. And
right.
that's what some people get confused when you're talking about rights. The only people, so when you're talking about you have a right to something that somebody else produces, you have a right to internet. You don't have a right to it because other people are having to work and expend their own property and their own time and capital creating that service. You don't have a right. You're not entitled to their service or their work. That's why you're not entitled to health care, free health care, because you have physicians and nurses and administrators operating this whole facility.
Well, we could do a whole other episode on
Yeah, yeah,
healthcare.
of course. And you can't just say, I have a right to your labor and your capital. I have a right to that just because. That's what the whole 13th Amendment got rid of slavery, forced labor, forced work. And so currently, even the way that our system is with the healthcare, physicians are kind of required for forced labor, even if they know they're not going to be compensated, just because it's a life-saving service. And you could even argue that that's terrible, which, again, another episode in the future. But
Well,
the
people
very
want to know why they charge what they charge. We could really break that down.
Oh yeah, and so again, you come to this political fantasy and this political hot button topic of free this, free this. I should have guaranteed health care or whatever. The reason that everything is so expensive is because people don't pay anyway. But again, we can have a whole episode on all that, and I hope we do. It'll be
We should.
yeah, we
That'll
will.
be a future one.
Yeah.
That'll be a future one. I can talk about radiology and the protectionist racket behind MRIs
Yeah.
and CT scanners.
Yeah. So, when people say they have a right to things, they just don't.
Yeah.
They just don't. And it's not fair because you have to think about what other people are having to go through in order to provide you a service. And Uber and everything is the same way. You don't have a right to it. The only time you have a right to a job is if you create it. If
Well,
you
here's the
found the
thing,
company.
Lee. I didn't come up with this because I now am a person of means. Like, I've always I've never felt like I had a right to anything ever.
Yeah.
I don't understand entitlements. I don't understand people who have that as their mental framework. It really baffles me. And if you'll notice in the argument I had with that gentleman, Daniel, is that his name?
I think it was Dave.
Dave Craig, right?
I think so.
Yeah. The argument I had with him, I got him to admit he's entitled. He said, yeah, hell yeah, I'm entitled to a minimum wage. Now, here's what's interesting about his position. He's out there fighting, supposedly, for people who are drivers because he drove for 2.5 years, he claims. Can't verify this, but he says it, so I'm just going to accept it. But here's the thing now. I doubt he's making minimum wage now. So he used Uber as a stepping stone to get to a higher paying job.
Oh,
and I keep asking him, how
wow.
much are you making now?
That's almost like the purpose.
Right?
It's almost like the purpose
And
of that
I've
role.
asked him like probably 3 times to tell me how much he's making now, but he won't answer. And that's because he's making more than the people he's advocating for, because he either feels guilty about it or he's just using it as a platform to try to get more followers. I've noticed that over and over again, he's posted, how many views a certain discussion has achieved for him.
Yeah, as soon as he throws out a hook and tries to reel people in like you or Balaji or whoever, he self-promotes that and says, oh, look how many views this has now. We're really getting into this conversation, just to promote himself, because the guy is also using a Substack subscription platform.
Oh my gosh.
So he's just promoting himself.
He's just trying to make money.
He's just trying to troll people and make money off of people's hysteria and anger and just like it's just crazy.
And what really sucks, and you and I have started trying to help an individual. You see people who are preying on these individuals. I do believe he's preying on them.
And that individual he was dragging around as kind of a prop,
a poster person.
Yeah, for the argument. And I'm actually, after we get done with this, I'm going to go back to work on helping them out with their stuff and send it back to them.
Yeah, why not help them find a job and
Yeah.
get them off Lyft and Uber if it's not serving their best interests? Like, why isn't he doing that instead of just sitting there saying, aha, look, this person, is in this bad position.
He spent days. He spent 2
I
days.
know.
2 days.
They're not your poster child.
He spent 2 days being a bullshit artist, bloviating all about this whole issue and ragging on you instead of spending those 2 days helping this individual
2 whole days would have helped this individual in
tremendously.
tremendous ways. Just opening the door for them, giving resume advice, giving, an optimistic outlook on life.
Because
would have helped.
I've been in very similar situations. I haven't lost my home. I've been bankrupt myself, totally in debt. I ran off to the mountains because I had a place that I could go. Lived there for a year and a half, literally as a mountain man, living off of fishing and hunting and trapping small game. Those were my groceries, and I did that for a long time, and until I started making my own woodwork material. So I had access to some equipment, so I started cutting down trees and making stuff out of hardwoods. And so
And this is why you can't be canceled.
that's why I can't be canceled. Worst case scenario, I go live the life as a mountain man and fish and hunt every day for my living.
Worst case scenario for me is I John Galt everybody. And I go to Galt Gulch and I run away and I say, with my 2 fingers in the air and say, fuck y'all. I'm out.
Yeah.
Let's hope that doesn't get to that though, because I really hope for the future, and I do think that some things are getting better. I gave up the fight on minimum wage a long time ago, and maybe I shouldn't have. It just seems like it's a losing battle. I can't put my energy into all the things I care about. So
Well, unfortunately, a lot of these people that are in the public eye trying to enrich and empower themselves, increase their position and their stature, um, and politicians as well, that are taking advantage of these people that they know have no education in economics, no education in finances, probably are just living off of credit cards, which is like the worst thing that you can do. Um, and then they're using them as props. They're using them as speaking engagements, and they're taking advantage of them. You have a politician like Bernie Sanders saying that everything's going to be free, and like a
free.
hundred billionaires are going to pay for it. Unfortunately, the sad part of that is the people that are saying yes, that sounds amazing, are the people that don't understand
Do
that
the math.
that does
There
not.
aren't even if you
doesn't
take
work
all the
out.
money away from all the billionaires, it
Mm-mm.
still
It's
does not
not even close.
come
Not
close
even close.
to solving the problems
So
they
they're
think they're
taking
solving.
advantage of these people that don't have financial literacy, and it's just drumming up hate and resentment against other people for no reason, just so they can get their ass in office.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Sanders, I don't know if you saw Biden recently lost his way in the middle of a conversation and just told people to vote for Trump. He says, yeah,
What? Was that a new one
it's a
today?
new one. It was like yesterday or
Oh my
something. And
God.
he basically said, what we've got to do. First, he said something negative about Trump and then like was on the right track. But then you could tell he got lost about what he was saying. And then he said, well, what we need to do is we all need to vote for Trump.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh my God. So basically we have a guy,
Biden is the gift that keeps on giving.
he's a sweet man, but we have this guy that is like losing his mental facilities.
Yeah.
And right in front of us, who's the front runner. And then you have Bernie Sanders. And I'm sorry, folks, but this is a dismal situation for you.
And they wonder how they lose an election.
Yeah, they're going to lose.
Case in point.
They're going to lose.
You have
Like, this was such a mistake. They had some really quality candidates.
Well,
in that group.
Look at the debate coming up, the next debate. So the rules for the DNC were you had to have a delegate to be on the stage for the debate. And then they changed the rules after this abysmal performance from Bernie Sanders from Super Tuesday, to where Biden took the lead, even though he was bankrupt and out of money at the time. And he didn't even go to all these states that he won in. So they changed the rules to now Tulsi Gabbard's not going to be on stage. Because now you have to have 20% of like the delegates or something. And so, of course, she doesn't meet that criteria because she has 2.
Wow.
But previously, just a few days ago,
So
she
who's
qualified.
still in? Who's still in? So we have,
You're down to Biden and Bernie.
that's it.
B&B.
Oh, man.
Down to the B&B.
How sad. How sad indeed.
So it's just a race to the bottom right now.
Yeah, I think, aren't all like 3 candidates like above 70 years old?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think.
I mean, not to be ageist.
No, I think.
But I'm going to be a little ageist right now. Don't you think we should have potentially a ceiling?
No, I don't.
We have a floor.
I don't think so. I mean, the floor is instituted for basic maturity, I believe. And even with that.
But you do go backwards as you get older. Maturity starts to you start to lose some marbles.
Maybe.
I'm being totally ageist. I know I am.
But if they have a good foundation, maybe they're still. I mean, look at we had some amazing founding fathers that were old.
Yeah, but they were like.
Look at John Adams. John Adams was.
How old was John Adams?
He was still kicking and fighting legal battles even after he left presidency. So.
Yeah, but these guys I mean, if you look at Hamilton and these guys, they were doing stuff when they were 16. They were different people. They had different grit.
Yeah, he also got shot.
Okay, yes, he got shot.
You have a picture on your side
I
of the table.
He got shot.
of
by
his
Burr in this duel that's sitting right in front of
because
me.
he was cocky and
I'm
immature.
grasping at straws here, but you know what I mean. These guys, like, they had grit. They fought wars and they rode horses and like they were of a different class of human being than the one today. Um,
Well, I mean, if you want Bernie Sanders and Biden to duel,
I think Sanders would win.
who knows?
If we had a Bernie Sanders Biden duel, my money's on Sanders. I think Sanders could win that one. Now, are we talking about a gun duel or like a fist fight?
I'm talking about a gun duel. They're both anti-gun, so I don't know how Bernie Sanders probably wouldn't want to touch one. Who knows?
I bet he would. I bet he has one.
Who knows? He's got armed guards.
Yeah. He's got out that's one of the things I love talking about is some people have guns, they just pay for them.
Hmm.
They outsource it to someone else.
Kind of like Bloomberg.
Yeah,
He just has like all these retired military and police that follow him around with guns. And then he basically his whole argument was even just recently was, oh well, he has that because he gets a lot of threats and because he's wealthy. So he needs guns because he's wealthy. But if you're poor,
you don't need any
you don't
guns.
need guns because you're not worth it.
Yeah, your life's not worth it.
You're not worth it. What a wonderful representative.
Yeah, next time you see someone who stands up against guns, ask them how many paid guns they have, especially if they're wealthy, especially if they're a politician.
Hmm.
If it's someone who's not wealthy who's against guns, then they still are pro-gun because they're usually pro-police.
Yeah.
And if they say they're not pro-police, I'm sure that they call 911 the first chance they get.
Hmm.
So
They're anti-gun, and then they say the only people that should own guns are police, even though they're anti-police.
yeah,
It makes a
you
lot
just
of
can't
sense.
make a whole lot of sense out of this.
No,
It's a
no.
logic
There's some juggling going on,
quagmire, mental juggling that you have to do.
and we can do a whole episode on that as well because
man.
just
Much material.
yeah, just yesterday or the day before, I saw an article out of New Jersey about a young black gentleman that is a security guard that is licensed to carry concealed weapons, and he was arrested for carrying a concealed weapon.
What the hell?
He's legally licensed in New Jersey to carry this and the ammunition, and they're trying to say that he has illegal ammunition, saying they're hollow points, even though they're not.
Oh my god!
And
And remember, folks.
so it's illegal to own a gun if you're black, essentially in New Jersey.
So remember this: black guns matter.
There's
There's an individual on Twitter who runs an organization called Black Guns Matter.
we need to get him on here.
I would love to get
we need
him
to get.
on.
We're doing it.
And I think that you should take a moment and go talk to him or read about why he stands up for the black community owning firearms. The Second Amendment is not for white people.
No.
It's for all U.S. citizens.
But you know what is for white people?
What's that?
Anti-gun laws.
Yes.
They started once we freed the slaves,
Yes.
and that was to hold blacks down and prevent them from arming themselves and potentially having retribution, evoking retribution against the whites that had enslaved them or oppressed them or beat them. So yeah, just to keep them down.
That's just fucked up.
That's where these laws came from. They started as Jim Crow laws down in the South as well, and yeah,
In my opinion, they should be armed to the teeth.
and especially, I mean, you go to Chicago, those are going to be the most dangerous neighborhoods. Those are the people that need guns.
Yeah.
The police aren't even going to be able to patrol and control those areas. They have criminals running around that are armed. The people that need the guns are the ones that are banned from having them.
Yeah, in Arizona, where I'm from, it's a gun state. You would think twice before engaging with someone in some bad behavior because chances are they have a gun.
Yeah, we have,
And
we're really,
sometimes you see it on their person.
yeah. Well, in the South, we're known for our chivalry and being polite, Southern hospitality. Part of that is because you know that everyone has a gun. So you have really good neighbors.
You dance around it.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm not going to be an asshole. He might shoot me.
Right, right. I ran into this in Oklahoma. I took my friend Lucas to Oklahoma with me, and we were trying to get to the house that I lived in with my grandparents for a short period. It had burned down. And so I wanted to show him, like, the burned down hole in the ground. But they had fenced it off, and we couldn't legally get into the property. We'd be trespassing. So we went down to this lake, and we were just, like, looking around, and it was really overgrown. And this guy comes out on a quad. And he's keeping his distance from us because, we might have a gun.
Mhm.
And I'm almost certain he had one. And so we did this little dance where eventually we make contact, and I'm like, "Hey," and I explain, that I was the granddaughter of this guy, and he remembered him, and he said, "Oh, well, why don't you just walk through so and so's property? They might shoot you, but probably not. They're not good aims." And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna take my chances walking through that property. And also, there's snakes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what I'm more afraid of: people with guns out there or
We
snakes.
do have guns, but we generally don't just shoot at people. So you
Yeah.
have to have a real reason for
My
it.
granddad used to
Trespassing is
shoot
not a reason.
people with rock salt. He would give them one warning, and that was it. So these kids used to trespass on his property, and the cops wouldn't do anything about it because he's an old man, and old men get a lot of respect.
At least it was less than lethal. It's
Yeah,
rock salt. It's not gonna
it's
kill
rock
you.
salt. It just really fucking
It just
hurts.
sucks.
It hurts. It just sucks really bad. Really, really bad. Anyway, today is a short episode. Is there anything else we want to cover about minimum wage? I think we about covered it.
I mean, other than the fact that you're not guaranteed to other people's property or enterprise, um, minimum wage adversely affects small businesses and benefits larger businesses. So think about that sort of philosophy.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, just I don't know. What do you want to add to it? I
I
mean,
say, in general, question the narrative that people are telling you, always, even mine, even what we're saying.
mhm.
If you don't believe what we're saying, don't take it as the absolute gospel. You know, go go read for yourself. Study Milton Friedman.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, economics is pretty solid. It's there's some different philosophies with it, but um, principles are principles. And Milton Friedman is one of the best people to read. He's got plenty of publications. There's plenty of videos on YouTube if you want to see some of his speeches. And go ahead and review some of those. And then if questions are raised to you as why you believe this, do some reading on that. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy was so genius that it's hard to argue with any of his points if you are being honest and objective about it.
So I've held this position my whole working life, and I've had some people say that they've read some studies that indicate otherwise, that minimum wage actually is better for the country. Um, read those too.
Mhm.
I'm not against knowledge.
And
You know,
if you're against or you're curious about entitlement payments or those sorts of programs or welfare, another wonderful economist is Thomas Sowell, and he is an adjunct professor down in Stanford. He's another wonderful example to listen to and learn from.
yeah. So I think, again, we're not saying that our way or the highway. Like, become educated about these issues. For me, it was I didn't read about it. I experienced it firsthand. It wasn't. I am uneducated. I did not study economics in order to figure out that I was being screwed. I was being screwed. And then I was like, why am I being screwed? And it turned out, oh, there's these artificial barriers that are all around me that are literally just constructs made the fuck up by people who want to use police to enforce these. That's where I actually started becoming libertarian, actually. So I
Mhm.
started thinking about, like, the use of force, you know, and that's a whole other podcast, which is,
Even when you were, you were working part time, you would have your managers getting on. Oh, you're working too many hours. You got to go home.
yeah, you got to
You
leave.
got to work. You got to go home. We
Yeah.
can't have you hit that threshold of 35 or 40 hours. You
Yeah, what
can't do that.
happens is you end up having to work two jobs because you can't just work one
Yeah.
in order to make ends meet. And so you wonder why a lot of people are working two or three jobs. It's, again, because of some artificial line that we've made that people don't cross so that they don't get these other benefits.
I mean, at the heart of it, a lot of people that are supporting minimum wage is they are doing it for compassionate reasons. They want to think that they're helping people out. They want to make sure
Unless you
that
have a
people can.
Substack that you're trying to make money off
Yeah,
of.
but there are two different concepts in economics. There is minimum wage, and then there is living wage.
Hmm.
So minimum wage is just a standard across the board, national or per state, to where everybody, no matter what job industry, no matter what city, no matter what level of education, you get paid this base amount. Even the people that are calling for $15 minimum wage nationwide, don't take into account living wage. And living wage is dependent on what city or what market you live in. Some markets are much more expensive to live and operate in, and there are other markets that you
You're
can
you're
that
really
you're
sitting pretty if you're making
if you're
$15 an
making
hour.
$15 an hour, you get paid very well. Like
Yeah.
some towns in Texas, like Brownsville, Texas. So if you go to Brownsville, Texas, the equivalent of like $100 is, so if you have to spend $100 nationwide at an average place. Brownsville, Texas, you only have to spend like $80.
Yeah, I
And
was
then
in
you get to
Dallas, Texas,
and you get to
okay?
pocket the other $20. So your cost of living is much lower. So the living wage and minimum wage are two separate things. And then you have people like Bernie Sanders that are conflating the issues on purpose during his his stump speeches, to where he's saying we're going to raise it to a livable minimum wage. Those are not the same thing. Those are not the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you have different parity and pricing
Livable in San
parities.
Francisco is very different than livable in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah,
So
no,
I was in Dallas, and guess how much a 5-bedroom, beautiful brick home
Mhm.
is in Dallas, Texas?
$450,000.
Less,
Really?
350,000.
Oh, that's
I mean, they're beautiful too. I was like, I did a whole walkthrough online, and I
even
was like
even in
fantasizing about it. I was
even
like,
in
oh wow,
yeah, even in Arkansas, that okay.
yeah.
Well, usually it's about $90 a square foot there.
It was
So
insanely good. And now, granted, these are cookie cutter homes that are
mhm.
in like every one of them looks the same.
McMansion
Yeah, they're all like
neighborhoods.
little McMansions in this like gated community. And then guess how much if you want to live downtown in a like a nice skyrise, and you want a 3-bedroom apartment in a skyrise downtown Dallas.
Mhm.
Guess how much that is?
2.25.
Good job. Yeah, that's exactly how much it is. I
Yeah.
asked someone else, and they were like, "Oh, it's got to be like 6 or 7." And I
No,
was like, "No,
no,
it's
no.
like 2.25."
Yeah, like in Fayetteville, Arkansas, one of the highest standard of living cities in Arkansas, if not a lot of part of the country, because even in the top 10 ratest um, desirable markets to live in, Fayetteville is generally in the top 10. Um, I remember years ago, and it's been quite a while, but there was a condo that I was looking at if I was going to stay, and that was in the town square area. It was like 85, 90,000 for 2,000 square foot condo. So it
Yeah.
wasn't bad.
So here's the other thing I noticed when I was in Dallas was Dallas has more diversity than San Francisco.
Hmm.
It kind of blew my mind. I was like,
Oh, they have a very huge
diversity you can see,
they have
not
a
diversity you can't see.
yeah.
I'm like, if you were talking about like sexual like orientation and that sort of stuff that you can't necessarily see, I don't know. I can't answer that. But from what you can visibly see,
Just based on race.
race and, the way people dress,
Hmm.
and like I saw people more, I hate the word race. I really do. But I saw more like quote unquote interracial dating
Hmm.
and friendship groups than I see here. And it was a stark contrast actually. It was very noticeable. I was like, wow, like this is really cool. Also, I saw a huge working population in the downtown epicenter that was black. And you don't see that here. And so a lot of,
You'll see that in Houston and all around. Yeah.
yeah, and not was is black, and that was really refreshing. So I was like everywhere, I went to Starbucks and all of these buildings, and there's people walking out of high rises wearing Gucci shoes, and I'm like,
Believe it or not, people in Texas, they can afford Gucci shoes too.
yeah, they can afford
Except for they
Gucci
just have a
shoes.
larger bank account because the
They
cost
don't
of living's
spend it
lower.
all on a place to live. They're smarter than we
They don't
are.
have to spend $60,000 or $50,000 a month for an apartment.
Yeah, they're smarter than we are. Um, so yeah,
Or
I
I'm sorry, a year, 50,000 a year.
I was really blown away by that. Now, some people might say, well, they're secretly hateful in their hearts or something.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know.
they're super racist. Ooh, those evil Southerners. Urgh.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
what out here I've heard the same nonsense about how racist people in the South are. I'm like, have you gone to the South? I came from the South. It's just total shit.
Yeah, I I really, really would encourage people in the Bay Area to go to Dallas, Texas, spend a week there, and just look around. You can feel it. You can feel that it's more diverse and that people are more friendly to each other and that friendships flourish
And
and businesses flourish
if you can withstand the
compared to
smell of
here.
if you can withstand the smell of horses and
Go
horse
to Fort
manure.
Worth.
Go to Fort Worth. It's
Ugh,
awesome.
It's awful.
It's awesome.
Awful.
Awesome. The stockyards.
Awful.
Go get some great steaks and some chili. They make chili from like
It's
brisket
worse
and
than
stuff.
Harris Ranch here. Like when you're driving
Oh, no,
past
it's
it, it's
not.
so bad.
No.
Oh my
Harris
God.
Ranch is way
It was like
worse.
that was the worst part of my trip going from Arizona to Oklahoma was going through Fort Worth. And we didn't have a fancy car where you could like recirculate your
Mhm.
air. You were stuck in the manure. Like you were just just terrible. Anyway, I disagree.
That's fine. That's fine. We can disagree. I love Dallas.
Yeah.
It's kind of Arkansas is kind of a suburb of Dallas, and so growing
Yeah.
up, I would go down there in the summers all the time.
I like Dallas too. I like a lot of places in Texas and including Austin. They all have their special place, I think. But yeah, no, I just spent a week in Dallas because I was there for some festival fair thing, and it was just I don't know, it was a different. They live a different speed too. Like everybody there is not in a hurry. You know, they're not rushing to and fro.
Traffic has gotten worse though.
Yeah, traffic wasn't great. It wasn't great, but
Yeah, it's getting a little
there's people
crowded.
on all these like little bird scooters scooting around. You know, people doing bike share just like every place else. You know, but again, stark contrast in who you see out holding hands
Mm,
and who are in these friend circles. Don't see it here.
yeah,
And I don't know what to make of that.
and
I
that
think
and
San Franciscans are not as open minded as they say they are.
no, they're definitely not. Ideologically, they for sure are not.
I think it
I've
would be reflected in what we see around us, don't you?
for sure. I mean, you wouldn't even see like dating profiles of people saying, "Oh, if you vote for so and so, don't even message me."
Oh
It's like
man.
all that craziness. That's what you see. That's the open mindedness, quote
Yeah.
unquote, here
My
in San
liberal
Francisco.
child is being radicalized by conservative thought.
Oh no.
Radicalized. It's like, no, you're radicalizing your child.
hmm
You're the one. You're the one who's telling them what they can and can't think.
You're the one banning
Oh,
books.
yeah. Burn the witch.
You're the one painting over a mural of the founding fathers and stuff at an elementary school here in San Francisco, spending like $200,000 to do it,
Yeah, when that $200,000 could be spent on a public toilet
or a person,
or a person. I
or
mean, a
like
toilet would be
food for
a
people.
great thing.
Yeah.
You know, it costs $200,000 per public toilet. Like, wouldn't that be a much better use of public funds than
Instead
dealing
of
with some
painting over a
stupid
mural
mural
that
that you
shows
could
some,
just put a curtain over
yeah, or
if
just
you
leave
really
it,
don't like
or
it?
just leave it and saying, "Hey, you might not like history, but shit, this is what history is."
Yeah,
Reality, folks.
it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
You don't have to agree with everything in history.
No, as a matter of fact, we should disagree with much of history and we should learn from
You
it. We
learn a
should not
lesson.
just make it disappear and pretend like it didn't happen.
That's why.
Um,
That's why I'm against.
that's what happens in China.
Yeah, I'm from the South. I'm totally against people ripping down Confederate statues and everything like that. People in the past put those up. There is a reason, culturally significant reason or historical reason that those people are up. Whether you like it or not, those might have been the generals or the colonels that led a battle in that area, and the people that died there were fucking Americans. So
Yeah.
whether you believe in what they were doing or not doesn't fucking matter. What matters is those people are in the South. Those people are Americans. They were born in this country, and they might have had different opinions. And people in the South still might have different opinions, but that doesn't give you any right to try to destroy their history or try to whitewash shit.
Yeah, I think that the better thing to do is to educate people about why what they did would be wrong
Yeah.
today.
And
And
you went to the South, and we know that history down there, and we don't have a problem with it.
yeah, well, I think
And we don't treat people in that sense in the way that we did in the past
no,
either.
and nor should we. And I think that it's better to educate people when you have history books that take out, like for example, I'm Irish,
Mhm.
and the history books when I was in school don't mention really what the potato famine was even really about. You know, it's basically this like brushed over history. Like here's Ireland. It's like a chapter in a book.
Or even how they were treated when they came here as immigrants.
Yeah. And then the other thing is like when you're in Oklahoma, I never once knew about, you know,
Black Wall Street.
Black Wall Street in Oklahoma. And that should have been a huge part of our teaching in school
That was over in Tulsa, I think,
in
right?
Tulsa, which was less than an hour away from me.
Mhm.
And I find out about it from a TV show, right? Today. And the reason why these things are important is because we do need to show kids and people that these atrocities happened and we should never repeat them. And this is why, Jews place so much importance on the Holocaust, and why they have the menorah, and why they have some of the traditions that they have is because they're basically saying, never forget that this happened to us, because the moment we forget, it will happen again to us or someone else.
That's what Passover is all about. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
it's what it's all
Just
about.
remembering that history, and that they don't eat sour foods and stuff just for fun or because they're delicious. It's
Yeah.
to remember
And I
that
actually
history and
think
that
we
pain.
do need to have those types of traditions for what happened in our country. And I do think that we should never repeat those things, but understand the history behind it. And destroying statues and destroying history is not going to help. It makes you feel good today. It makes you feel like you did something. You righted a wrong. I understand why people do it. It's
Mhm.
it's a celebration of getting rid of that thing that causes you so much anguish when you think about what happened to your family. However, it doesn't fix things in the long run. It
No.
actually makes people ignorant of what actually happened.
Yeah.
And so we can't let those things go away because it would be like getting rid of Auschwitz. Like, let's just
It's like
bulldoze
that's an
Auschwitz.
uncomfortable memory. Let's just
Let's get
flatten
rid of it.
Yeah.
Let's just say the Nazis never existed because it makes us feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
No, we need to keep those landmarks up. We need to keep the statues up because we need to remember what a horrific time period that was and what people are capable of doing. We are capable of horrendous shit.
Yeah. So I think even with this minimum wage talk, remember that it's really about Americans and people. Even if we disagree politically, you don't have to debase people or demonize them for their business choice, their success, their stature in society, just because they believe something different than you. I don't support forced minimum wages. I don't support all these other things like, never-ending welfare programs, because I grew up in the South and I've seen what welfare programs will do. It helped destroy cities in Arkansas. So, I mean, we don't have to agree, but
We
don't
could be
de-
civil to
but
each
we can
other.
be civil. We can have a
Yeah.
discussion, and maybe we'll learn. Maybe you'll teach me something. Maybe I'll teach you something. We never know.
That's what I hope the canceled podcast at the end of the day is about is, us having or projecting what we'd like to see in the world, which is the ability to have these types of conversations. I even think we should get people on the podcast we disagree with and talk openly
Yeah.
about things and and go from there. But I'll wrap that up and thank everyone for listening. If you got this far, I'm always impressed. I feel like I should have like a code word that you can tweet to prove to me that you got to the end. I don't know. But I probably should put it more 3/4 of the way through, because right at the end is kind of cheating. You can just sort of like fast forward. Today's code word is Rubik's Cube.
There you go.
So if you tweet Rubik's Cube,
Hashtag Rubik's Cube.
hashtag Rubik's Cube, then I will know you made it to the end.
Awesome. All right, thanks everybody. We will catch you later, and we have a website coming soon.
It's beautiful.
It's looking really cool, so it should be up in the next few days, and then we will be on all the platforms pretty soon. All right, thanks.
It's chippy. The bit stream still flowing. These stacks that we smashing. Rock gadgets to your address. The packets stay blasting. Regardless of your patches. These keystrokes go East Coast and worldwide. We on now. Find us and then sign us. We got the world behind us. And why that's honest. Then doomsday is upon us. And this DDoS Adonis still making good on his promise. Your site know your firewall is trash. Your network is dead. Take a look at all of these graphs. Unbox and no stopping. That trace route stop hopping. Software that we backdoor. Root shares that we hack for. Toolbars and set